Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Loving the Game. I'm Jacques from the Yellow Cap Sports, and tonight my first guest is going to be Andy from Scrum 5, Andy Daniel, all the way from England, although he's living in South Africa now. Yeah, I just want to say thanks, Andy, for joining, and I really hope this is going to become a nice series that everybody's going to follow. And we're going to get to know a lot of people that's on social media doing their bit for the love of the game and specifically rugby. And because I think there's a lot of unsung heroes and a lot of pundits out there that probably should be on TV that doesn't get the opportunity to be there because we weren't professional sportsmen in our days. But I think we do offer a lot, and just the fact that we have so many people following us and rating and believing in what we say, and sometimes not agreeing, which is great. That is what we want. Most of the time, is to form debate and have conversations about the sport that we love. And as I mentioned, Andy joins us. Welcome, Andy.
Hey, Jacques. Thanks for having us on tonight. Really excited for this.
So, Andy, just to start things off, I just want to ask you, first of all, before we get into the meat of what I want to chat to you about, is just if you can just tell the people basically at this point in time, well, besides sitting at home, obviously, but what do you do on a normal daily when you aren't in lockdown? What do you do for a living? And tell us a little bit about your website and your love. Well, don't go into the rugby section yet, but just your daily stuff before lockdown.
So at the moment I'm actually the brand manager for a company called Cape Fynbos Gin. It's obviously a well-known gin in South Africa, which is a great role for me. So that's my day-to-day. A lot of time in the van, a lot of time making sure that invoices go out correctly. So and that's great. But yeah, obviously I've got the website as well. When I arrived in South Africa 2 years ago, almost to the day actually, I decided to start my own rugby website, and it's all basically my own opinion. And I've had a few guys write for me over the time, some in Afrikaans as well as English, and attempted to do a bit of school stuff, which has been a bit up and down, but the last year and a half really has been Varsity Cup has been amazing for me. I've done lots of stuff on Varsity Cup, but also I've used the website just to do whatever I want with it, which is great. I don't steal other people's videos and claim them as my own, and the websites I'm talking about, we just retweet. Like I've done a mental health study, which was amazing, and amazing feedback on that. But as long as it's around rugby, we'll talk about anything. And it's not just, as you know, it's not just what happens on the pitch that everyone's interested in, especially at the moment. It's what's happening off it, as much as anything. And there's a lot of people with stories to tell.
So, Andy, going, the first thing I would like to know is where did your love for rugby basically start, or who installed that passion of the game? Who basically introduced you to the game? So who, what, or where?
About 2 days old, I think. My dad had me throwing a rugby ball around. He was rugby mad, sports mad. I spent every Saturday with my dad. Either he was refereeing, he was coaching the team, he was coaching me, he was coaching the teams I played in. We were watching it on TV. He was absolutely rugby mad, so I didn't really have a choice. And apart from the first couple of years of my life, I grew up in Cornwall in the far southwest, which is a huge rugby hotbed. I mean, you've got players like Cowan Dickey's coming out of there, Jack Knowles from Cornwall. There's a huge history. Phil Vickery's Cornish. So yeah, like down in Cornwall, rugby's a bit of a religion. So I didn't really have a choice. But yeah, completely from my dad. I literally followed him around the county, should I say. He was refereeing. We were in the rugby clubs, me with my pint of Coke, and while he was sort of chatting to everybody after the game. So yeah, our whole weekends from Saturday morning to Sunday night revolved around rugby.
So obviously that would bring me to the next question. Basically, like, who would you say? I don't know. Maybe you had a different team, but who's your favorite team at the moment? And has it always been your favorite team? Is it one of those where you've grown up supporting them, or did something happen along the line and you changed allegiance?
No. I've any sports team I support, I stick to since I was a kid. So my first few years of remembering rugby, I was in Somerset, and our nearest club happened to be Bath Rugby. So I've always been a lifelong Bath Rugby fan. The last few years have been very difficult. But when I first started supporting them, they were top of the league, winning the league every year. Their rivalry with Leicester was massive. The players were all England players. And we had like different setups in the UK where you played county, then you played regional, then you played England. So you got a chance to see these players on so many different levels, and all this coverage was on domestic TV then. So yeah, I was a huge Bath Rugby fan as a kid, and I'm still a huge Bath Rugby fan now. So not so much success nowadays, but you can't change your team, can you?
Well, I'm glad to hear you one of the committed supporters, because yeah, I'm also one of those guys, and I've been having lived in quite a few places myself. I've always stuck to my guns. It's pretty evident, I suppose. You can see in the background who I support, and it's you've got to be a tough guy to support that team. So, but anyway, it's not about my team or about me tonight. It's all about your love for the game. And yeah, it's really nice to get to know you in this kind of way. Just out of interest, your favorite ground anywhere in the world, and why?
Ooh, there's a few. The Rec is obviously really important to me. I've watched a lot of rugby there. It's a beautiful place to watch rugby. It's on the river in Bath. We're having a few problems now. We're trying to rebuild the stadium, but great place to watch. I've been to what's it called now? The Principality on a Friday night. England Wales underneath the roof. England won, thank goodness. But wow, what a place! But oh no, I can't cheat on Twickenham, can I? Twickenham is always going to be special to me. My dad was the first person to take me there. I think it was 1990 for a county championship final. And then 91 again, Cornwall got to the county championship final. We packed out Twickenham. At the time, it was like 50,000. But absolutely, it was like literally last person in the county switch off. It was a sea of black and gold. And my dad took the whole family up there, and we went, and Cornwall won in extra time. It was unreal, massive comeback. But over the years, I've obviously gone to Twickenham a lot, and as you come out of Twickenham station and you sort of walk down the hill and you do a little S bend, and as you come around the S bend, obviously everyone's walking there. You see Twickenham because it's massive, and it's just like this really imposing concrete. It's not the prettiest place. Like, it's a monstrosity. This thing's like a behemoth. It's huge. And I get the same feeling now. Well, obviously I haven't been for a couple of years, but when I walk around that corner, I get the butterflies. I'm like a kid again. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to Twickenham. It doesn't matter if it's for an England game, Premiership final, sevens, whatever. I'm like, I get to go to Twickenham today. And it's, yeah, every time I walk up the steps, you know what it's like when you walk out into the sort of bowl. I still get heart flutter. I still think of my dad. I think and my heart goes, and I can't cheat on Twickenham. Twickenham for me is the most sacred place. It's where it all started anyway. So
yeah, I must admit it's a ground that I would love to go to if any ground in the world. I don't think there's another place, not for any particular reason. I just think maybe it's probably just because it's the home of rugby. It's where it all started, and it's just steeped in history. Yeah, and I mean, like you say, it's like I know exactly that feeling that you're talking about, like when you step into the bowl, as you called it, which is actually a very nice term. Even now, having gone to Loftus, I mean, obviously I love Loftus a lot. There's one or two other grounds that I quite appreciate too, but I mean, at the end of the day, Loftus is one of my favorite grounds. It's just that feeling when you walk through that little tunnel and suddenly it's just there. It feels like the first time when I was a little boy and my parents took me there the first time. It just blows your mind completely, and it never ever changes. And yeah, it's actually quite difficult to sometimes explain it. Only a real rugby lover will really know what I think we're talking about.
But it's the memories that are in.
Yeah.
I'd say it's the memories inside the place as well. It's not just about sort of walking around it. It's go, especially when you go to Twickenham, it's the whole experience because there's like a Guinness village outside, massive screen. So on an autumn so what we call autumn internationals, the November internationals, you go in, you watch England, South Africa, freezing cold, come out, couple of pints of Guinness, and then Ireland, New Zealand's on this huge screen outside. So you stand outside Twickenham, watching on a huge screen. There's a band playing. It's all going off. It's absolutely amazing. So I think part of it's not only just the building itself that means so much to you, but it's what's inside it and the memories that you keep. And I think that's why Twickenham's so special to me.
I'm sure there are a few moments that stand out for you in regards to what you've just spoken about. And I mean, you could probably pinpoint every memory that you think of, you can actually remember where you were sitting on that day. And whether it's a good memory, whether it's a bad memory. Just before we get to memories, I just want to actually ask you, your favorite player then and now. I mean, obviously, generations change, players come and go. Who's your favorite player? Maybe back in the day when you were small, and then maybe it's changed now. I don't know. Maybe it's still the same guy.
No, funnily enough, like when I was first became a Bath fan, my favourite player was actually Andy Robinson. The ex-Scotland coach, Andy Robinson. He was a back row. He didn't play for England so many times because it was during the sort of period of Skinner and Winterbottom. So he didn't get so many caps, but he was incredible. Our back row was like himself, John Hall, we had Ben Clark, Steve Ajomo around that side. So I loved Andy Robinson as a kid because like my dad used to be like, look at his attitude. He just never gave up. He tackled everything. It was just one of those horrible, ugly little players that was just constantly there. And then it sort of develops. And then look, Johnny Wilkinson is always going to be number one for me. But from a club perspective, my someone who I suppose I watched and tried to shape my playing days over was actually Matt Perry. Matt Perry, the former England fullback. He was a Bath player. The best hands I've ever seen on a rugby player. It didn't matter if the ball was pinged at his feet, grub a kick, whatever. This man cleaned up for fun. He had a great attacking game and a ping of a left foot, and he loved a torpedo kick. And I love a torpedo kick. Bring it back.
Yeah.
And he like I wanted to play fullback. I had great hands. I had a good boot on me. And I used to watch him a lot. And I love Matt Perry. Whoever want an example of how good his hands were, look at the Jason Robinson try in 2001 first test Lions against Australia. Perry flicks the ball on. And Perry would have probably got 80, 90 caps if it wasn't for injuries. And I mean, he played in a team with Mike Catt, Phil de Glanville, Jeremy Guscott at the beginning of his career, Ian Bolshaw, Mike Tyndall, Kevin Maggs, and always stood out. Solid. So from that time of like my learning where I wanted to sit in the rugby world, Matt Perry was an icon to me. Now it's a bit weird, really. It fluctuates from week to week. One minute I love Mauro. The next minute I want to give him a slap if he wasn't 8'7". I love his game. Look, I love Owen. Like I grown to love Owen Farrell. Hey, like even for the English, it took a while. But no, I enjoy people like Anthony Watson. I love watching him play. I enjoy watching Johnny May. Like nothing up there, but he's a great rugby player. Absolutely nothing up there. But I think over the next couple of years, one of my favourite players is going to become Sam Underhill. Not only is he a Bath man, but I just love his old school. See you, hit you. I'm going to try and turn you over. And there's so many good players. There's so many good players out there that I enjoy watching now.
That's awesome. I don't know if you collect like memorabilia, or if it's not your thing. I know. I mean, some guys just don't do it. Some guys do. I mean, clearly I do. Where possible.
I'm coming for your Johnny Wilkinson signed shirt, by the way.
Yeah. I should probably. I mean, I can't put it. Yeah, it's hanging. It's just outside. It's just on the other side of that wall. Unfortunately, my wife drew a few lines in the house. Otherwise, I would have probably plastered every single wall in my house with all the memorabilia I have. So I've got a bit of a problem when it comes to getting all my stuff up. But yeah, it's unfortunately, we have to compromise. So yeah, it's one of those things. But what is your favorite memorabilia piece? The one that you like, come hell or high water, it will never go.
It's a funny one because I don't really have a huge amount of like signed memorabilia or stuff like that. I actually, because I've always worked in sports. So in the UK, I worked at Wembley Stadium. I worked for Arsenal for a few years and stuff. I've sort of picked up bits and pieces that probably can't be picked up on the street, so to speak. So I've got a beautiful like pewter replica of Wembley Stadium. I've got signed Arsenal shirts. I'm a huge Liverpool fan, so when I left Arsenal, they managed to get me a Liverpool shirt to Andy from James Milner.
Oh wow!
A good story is a friend of mine was who I worked with. He's like one of my best mates. He was walking around the sort of the road inside Wembley Stadium, one of the NFL games, and one of the cables, the kicking balls, during the practice went through the sort of exit tunnel onto the service road. So he picked it up and he gave that to me. So I've got like random bits and bobs kicking around, but the one thing I want to turn into a huge piece of memorabilia is a few years back it cost me a fortune. I bought a 1997 British Lions shirt. They were like rocking horse dung for years, and I paid a pretty penny for it, and it's in great condition. So next year, basically, I'm just going to walk around with a shirt and hope that I bump in to any sort of Lions player from the 97 tour, get that signed, get that framed. That'll be me done for life. Because you go to these dinners and stuff. I've been to like sports dinners when I worked at like Arsenal and places like that. And people are paying thousands and thousands and thousands because they're drunk, and then they don't actually pay for it in the end, or they've got too much money to care. So like it's not. I've got loads of cool pieces, but not really like a standout piece. But hopefully that 97 Lions shirt will become that.
Oh well, hopefully you can get one or two guys to sign it. I mean, the more special it would be. What's been your biggest heartbreak moment of all time?
Look at your face. You've been so excited to ask me this, haven't you?
You know what? When you started laughing, I realized what you were on about, and I wasn't on about any of it. But no, I don't. I'll change the question if you want. What's been your biggest heartbreak moment in rugby besides the Springboks beating England?
I walked into that. Look, last year hurt. I'm not going to lie. Last year hurt. It's weird. Like 07 didn't hurt so much because we weren't supposed to be in that final. Like we were terrible. But we made it. It was a good journey. It was good fun. It was great fun. And it was what it was. The final was actually rubbish. I always get a bit annoyed when you feel the players probably come off the field and have regret. And I think 2019 World Cup final, the England players would have sat there with some regret and be like, did we really do ourselves justice? South Africa made them play the way they did, but do you know what I mean? Like, I've watched football clubs and dominate a season, go to a playoff, and I've sat at Wembley, watched my team at Wembley, and they just don't turn up. And I'm like, I think probably though, if I was to pinpoint one, and he's much bigger than me, and he would, but genuinely, I'd love a minute in a room with Ronan O'Gara. When that ball went up in 2009, I was in a pub with my future wife, and I was like, please don't tackle him. Please don't tackle him. And it was like watching a car crash in slow motion. And I'm like, please don't. Oh, you have. Oh, great. And probably the best goal kicker in the world at altitude is now going to lose the game. So I think not only was that second test probably the best test match I've ever watched in my life, which came a week after the second best test match I'd ever watched, which at the time was the first. That, because the Lions to me is everything. So for that hurt. That really hurt. Yeah.
So out of interest, it's an interesting comment you just made there, saying the Lions are everything to you. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, just out of interest? It's interesting hearing someone say that, and I'd like to know why.
Mine's probably more on a personal level than anything. Obviously, growing up in the UK, the Lions was like stories of legends, like because of the tours. Like, it's funny, isn't it? Like, I remember England touring here in '94, and everybody, I think even Invictus made out like we came over here and stuck it to everybody, and we actually only won 3 of 11 games or something. I think we lost 8. It was dreadful. But the Lions tours are stories of legends, and 1997 is obviously huge to me. So I'll try and keep this short. But in '95, when you won the World Cup, I remember being sat on the floor of my house because me and my dad used to lean against the sofa and watch it. Curtains closed, reflective, horrible TV. And I remember my dad being sat there crying when Francois Pienaar walked up to get the trophy off Nelson Mandela, because he understood the gravity of what was happening. Obviously, I was trying to understand. I was a teenager, but he was sat there crying, and he was going to me, "You don't understand how big this is. You don't understand how big this is." So then 2 years later, we end up obviously touring South Africa, given no chance. First test at Newlands, Dawson throws the dummy, Teichmann, Van der Westhuizen, Krieger, they all go for it, and he dives over first test win. Second test wasn't as joyful to watch. It was horrible to watch. But obviously then you've got the Gus Scott drop. And that second test was the last game of rugby I ever watched with my dad.
Oh, wow.
Because what he didn't tell me at the time was that he had a brain tumor, and a few months later, he left us. And that's why the Lions to me is huge. So like when we won in 2013 in Australia, when we won that deciding test, I broke down. I broke down in tears. I was in the pub. It was probably too much Guinness, to be honest. But I was in the pub because that's what the Lions means to me, and that's why next year is going to be huge for me. Because the last game I ever watched with my dad was that second test, which is a pretty bittersweet thing for me. And but it will always put the Lions on a pedestal, because he would always talk to me during these games. Like I remember South Africa coming to. He loved Just. He loved Just Van der Westhuizen, right? And I was a scrum half as a kid coming up through the age. So he was always going to me, like, he'd always coach me through these games. He'd be like, "Watch Just. Watch what he does. He always looks up. Doesn't always take the gap. He always look like, he waited and stuff." So like he was Yeah, so like I remember do you remember when Just scored that try at Twickenham when he chipped Underwood and went round and dived in the corner? Incredible try. And I remember my dad standing up going, I told you, watch this man, watch this man. Like, he was like clapping it because he just loved good rugby, so he was clapping it. So that for me is why the Lions will always be on a pedestal for me.
Yes. Sounds like you had an awesome dad.
Yeah, man. Top man.
So obviously, if that was, well, I mean, we just jumped a bit there, but your most memorable moment as a rugby supporter, what would that be?
I mean, well, obviously 97 now, but 97 wasn't actually the moment of Gus Scott dropping it. It was the aftermath, and then you had the Living with Lions DVD, which was like the greatest sports video made ever. So that whole tour had an aura about it, and the whole thing was like
that DVD is only because they haven't released the Springbok World Cup campaign from 2019 yet.
You don't need to check. Yeah, but no, in South Africa and the time it takes them, they'll release it in 2025, so we're all good. And I mean, I think single moment. There's only one, isn't there, for an English fan? And Johnny dropping that over. I remember being in a pub just down from my university. A load of us in there, and so 2003, 5 years after we lost the dad, I'm there with my brother, and I just remember it going over and then the final whistle, and me and my brother just hugging each other, crying for like A, we'd won the World Cup, but B, it was like dad should be here watching it with us, sort of thing. You know what I mean? And it was like it was huge, and I think there comes a relief, you know, when your favourite to win something, like you were probably favourites in 07, so the pressure was on you, and that probably why you didn't play actually that well in the final. You did what you had to do to get over the line, but you weren't, as you know. I mean, like after what you did to us in the group stage.
You
know, I mean, through Dupree, just didn't get going and stuff. But when it's supposed to be your time, when it's supposed to be you to win it, and then you win it, it's relief. And when you relief, you get emotional. And just remember, like that game finished at like 11 o'clock in the morning in the UK, so I was well oiled by then.
That's awesome. Any whether it's your own or whether you've heard it, is there any rugby tale that you can maybe share with us that not necessarily one of the ones that the world knows, but something, you know, something more, even if it's like, I don't know, maybe there's a story from, you know, the circles of Bath and or whoever, you know, Cornwall, I don't know, maybe just an interesting rugby tale that you can share with us that most people probably haven't really heard of yet. Whether it's true or not, that's another story.
There's one I've heard but there's actually two I've heard after dinner speeches quite regularly in the UK. Right. One's that Martin Johnson got punched at the Parc des Princes. I think it's from Livremont. I can't remember who it was. And he grabs, the referee goes for his card, and Johnson says, "Do not send him off." And the ref's like, and then 15 minutes later, Mark Livremont gets carried from the field after an incident at the bottom of a ruck. So I've heard that one. Wow. But I think one of my favourites is I've heard Will Greenwood tell this story. So 2003 World Cup final, obviously one of the things that England had was this amazing pack. And we played Australia in 2003 leading up to it. We toured Australia. We beat New Zealand in New Zealand. We had 13 men on the field. Dallaglio back got yellow carded. So we were like pumped up. But we destroyed Australia up front in this match. And then it went into the final, and it was Andre Watson who had the whistle that day. Good old Andre. So he says, pulls the front rows in beforehand. So we got Steve Thompson, you got Leonard on the bench, Julian White, Phil Vickery, and they're like Sheridan, I think, was there. And he said, guys, I will not give a penalty at the scrum unless I will put my house on it. So they're like, amazing. So the England boys go back into the changing room, are like, this is on, boys. He's not going to give a penalty at the scrum, just scrummage. Just scrummage. We know we're going to have him up front. Just don't do anything silly, just scrummage. So I said, we got pinged a few times. We dominated them up front, but he kept pinging us. Anyway, 79 minutes and 49 seconds, we're 3-0 up. We're 3 points up. And scrum goes in, hit. Andre Watson pings us. Obviously, Alvin Flatley kicks the penalty or whatever, go to extra time. Andre Watson pings us, to which apparently Steve Thompson stands up and says, Andre, you must have a shit house.
I should actually try and see if I can get hold of Andre and then, ask him about that game.
Yeah.
I know he lurks around under a pseudonym name, so yeah, it will be. And I know what the name is, even though he tries to deny it the whole time. So, but I'll try and twist his arm. Maybe we can get him on. It would be really cool to get a few big names on here as well at some stage. Something that I've always had in my mind, and I'd like to ask you this also, is if there was one question you could ask one specific player, regardless whether they're still around or not, what would that question be, and who would it be? And it doesn't have to be if in your case it's not a rugby player, then so be it. But if you could ask one question to one famous player, whether it's international or not, what would it be?
I'm not really sure. I think if I was to ask a generic question to a lot of people,
okay,
because mental health issues are a huge thing for me. Personally, I've got friends, family, and people that struggle. So for me, I think there's a lot of players out there who struggle after euphoria, and there's a lot of people just generally in life that go from high to low and struggle. And I would love to ask some of that. I mean, winning a World Cup's obviously huge, and you get lauded. And like when we won in 2003, London was packed, and there was a huge parade. And everything like that. But I think I'd love to ask one of your 95 squad, that first moment when they actually just went back to their house, sat in a chair, and went, okay, now life has to reset. How on earth do you do that as a rugby player? It's no surprise that all these pop stars get into drugs and drink and stuff, because you think Robbie Williams does 90, 100,000 at Nebworth. He comes off the stage and then goes, oh, I'm off to my hotel room how do you come down from that? And I think for me, because 95 in your home country, the sanction has just been lifted. Like, I could count 10 different reasons why Nelson Mandela was on the stage with Pina. Like, at what stage, how do you cope with that? And you're seeing a lot of players from that era now, that's been well documented in the last couple of years, who have struggled. And we've had tragic news from that South African team in the last few years, and I'd love to know A, how they coped, and B, was there anything for them? Because everyone assumes they're going to live this life doing after dinner speaking, But I couldn't imagine having 1 minute 90,000 people screaming my name, and then the next minute sat at home. I just don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a quite a pertinent question for a lot of people, especially like look at the South Africa squad that's just won now. So half the England squad go back and they 10 of them join the same team. But this South Africa squad now go to Japan. Some of them stay here. A load of them are in Manchester at Sale. And like you're family for like 8 weeks, 10, 12 weeks. You go to the absolute pinnacle of your sport, what you've worked for the last 4 years. And then you're like, right, bye, you're off to Japan.
Yeah.
How have you worked with that? That must be insane. I don't know. Because I've studied a bit of mental health stuff and I've spoken to people who have struggled, that would probably be my question. Sorry if that's a bit of a depressing question, but
no, not at all.
I just think it's something that needs to be really, really looked at. It's not just the physical state of these players, but it's the mental state day to day that I think is vitally important.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, just listening to what you've been saying, and I've been reading James Dalton's book, and he actually does touch on that as well at one stage where he kind of mentioned it, as you said it, it's like 1 minute you're up there and the next minute you're at home, and it's just all the noise is gone, everything is gone, your mates are gone, it's just you and yourself, or you and your wife, or you girlfriend. It's like everything's gone. And I think also the difference between then and now, where like you mentioned, a lot of these guys literally came off, they won the World Cup, came back home, had a 4-day parade, and then literally the day after that parade finished, a lot of them got on a plane to Japan. I don't know whether it's good or not. Maybe in a way, I think it's probably good because their minds just keep on going. And it's just on to the next thing. In 95, it wasn't the case. There wasn't a Japan. There wasn't a UK contract waiting for you. You were waiting for the next South African event or whatever the case may be. At that stage, the landscape was a complete different setup than what it is now.
Yeah.
So it's actually very interesting. It's interesting, and I mean, it just shows. I mean, we all think about things differently, and I mean, obviously, you've touched on it, you studied it, you are into this mental health thing. So, some random weird question. I mean, pick your brain and just find out how do you think? I mean, supporting England already says a lot.
But it's like I've spoken to like grassroots players all the way up to I sat down with Dion Carstens, which was great. I sat down with a guy called Ivan Buerta, who used to play Griquas and then got contracts in France. He was in Pau, and his career was done like that. Bang! He landed at the he landed off a line out. His ankle was turning the wrong way. He'd been through injuries after injuries after injuries. And then 2 weeks later, he finds himself living in his in-laws' house outside of Cape Town in the spare room with his family. So 1 minute he's like, he can't walk the streets of Pau without somebody going, "Oh my God, Ivan, we love you."
Yeah.
He was that close to signing for Montpellier, and then he comes back. But when I've interviewed these guys, none of them. So if the professional guys, none of them have said it's the money I miss. It's the teammates they miss. It's the smell in the changing room they miss. It's the build up to match day. It's the first tackle. If you're a rugby boy, you're a rugby boy, And sorry, and I shouldn't say that, and female as well. If you're in that, if it's ingrained in you as a rugby person, it's ingrained in you, and then you take that away. Ivan ended up sitting in an office on his own. He runs a very successful now liquor store, but for the first 2 years, he's like, there was no teammates. There was nobody to help me. I was on my own. And that in itself is like, here's 15 brothers. Tomorrow you're not going to see them. Bang. And I just find that incredibly difficult. And I think well, back to the point, that 95 squad, I mean, wow. How you come down off that, I do not know.
Well, hopefully in the next few weeks, I might have one of those 95 members on the show. So hopefully, whoever's watching, will stick around for a while longer, and then I'll actually try and remember and just throw that question there, because I think it's something I think we've all at some stage have thought about. I know I have thought about it as well, because maybe in a different way, in the sense of, after 20, or let's say, when because at that moment you're still a player, and some guys will be fine. But then, let's say 6 years or 5 years, depending on how old you were at that stage, winning the World Cup, your career suddenly comes to an end. Then it all comes crashing down in one moment, because then you wake up one Monday morning and it's gone. I think, for some guys it's okay because they prepare themselves to retire. Some guys it gets taken away immediately. So it gets handled differently. But on that point of the parade is over, the formalities are over, you step into your house for the first time, what happens? I'll definitely pop that question. Because I know I've had confirmation that the gentleman he has agreed to come on the show, which is really awesome. I don't want to say yet who it is, but you have someone and it's nice having chats like this, and kind of helping me gauge some questions.
I'm here for you, brother.
I've just got one last question basically for you, and it's pretty much just saying, if you had one wish in rugby terms, what would that wish be? Obviously something that hasn't happened yet, unless your wish of rugby has already happened, and which I doubt it has happened, because I mean, you do support England, so it's impossible. Sorry, you know me and you, we get along like a house on fire, and
yeah, we do. To be fair, we take every opportunity.
And, I suppose if there was a scorecard, you'd be way behind at this stage.
Anyway, let's do this again next year when the Lions have just come over and whitewashed you. On a personal level,
get together, hopefully.
on a personal level, I want to watch the Lions next year. That would be huge for me. I've never seen the Lions live. Now the perfect opportunity. I will cry. I'm a man enough to say I will cry a lot, and look up to the heavens on that one. I think what this horrible lockdown period has done for the world is given everyone a chance to reflect. And I think the world of rugby needs to reflect to where it's at the moment, because everybody's moving in different circles, and then we come together for this World Cup, and the World Cup's great, and then we go back to normality. And it's sad to see empty stadiums. It's sad to see, I genuinely think we need to go back to basics. We need to get these local competitions back up and running. We need to get behind things like the Currie Cup and get the big players playing there. I mean, the Pro 14 is, I mean, who wants to watch? No offense, and I'm sorry if there's any Connacht or Kings fans, but that's not going to attract people to come and watch Connacht Kings on a Sunday afternoon. It's not going to happen. Sorry, but it's not. The Premiership is getting good attendance, and that's fine. But globally, we've got lost in commerciality, and my wish is that we bring it back. We have a little bit of a reality check. The Stormers versus Sharks, Stormers versus Bulls should be 50,000 people sold out, either at the Cape Town Stadium next year or at Loftus, and get these players. And I know money talks, I get it, but our Saturdays aren't what they were, are they? We want to watch packed houses, whether you're there or whether it's on the TV. that clip. I'll tell you what's been breaking my heart. This clip. He's one of my favourite players of all time, and I shouldn't admit this, but Jacques Fauré. This clip of him going through the Crusaders under the post at a packed Newlands makes me sad, because even in the UK, the Super Rugby tournament had an aura about it. It was
wow.
oh, the Stormers are playing the Crusaders. Like, let's watch this because it's going to be packed. And now, I hate to say it, and it's not the only tournament, but Super Rugby's a bit of a, like, in the UK is like, oh, really? I can't be dealing with the Crusaders Hurricanes on a Saturday morning. Like, it's one of those things you watch if you're up with the kids. Like, it is. Whereas before it was like, why are you watching Bulls Stormers? I'm like, have you seen the players? Have you seen who's playing in this game? And it's, but it's not, I'm not picking on Super Rugby, it's everywhere. But I think get these domestic tournaments back up and running. Get the Currie Cup back on an elevated keel, and start again. And that's my wish. I want to see full stadiums. I want to see people from their own country playing in their own country and taking pride in the shirt that they're wearing, and not pride in the transfer, and not pride in the paycheck that they're getting.
Well, I like that wish. I think a lot of people would love to see packed stadiums again, across the world. I mean, it's starting to show all over the show. Unfortunately, like you said, it's not taking a dig at Super Rugby at all. It's just a matter of, one of the premier tournaments in the world. And sad to say, I mean, this year, even though there was only like 8 rounds of rugby, it wasn't just in South Africa where the stadiums were, going empty. It was actually New Zealand, Australia. It was all over the show. And yeah, something has to be done to rejuvenate the landscape of rugby, to get to that, 40, 50,000 people coming to stadiums. I mean, watching these reruns on Super Sport these days, it's
sad to watch.
It's sad to watch because you
Great
see
memories.
crowds, and you're remembering those days and you were part of those crowds. And I mean, going to a stadium nowadays where it's empty, it's just not the same. So
if the Bulls played the Lions or Stormers in the final of Super Rugby, could you guarantee that stadium would be full?
Not now. I would say it myself.
The final of Super Rugby, and you can't guarantee it. And there's a reason that these stadiums are 50,000 plus, because there was an appetite for stadiums to be built of 50,000 plus people.
Yep.
They wouldn't have built them otherwise.
No, they didn't. It wasn't.
And it was built on.
It was the norm. I remember going to Loftus. I can't remember what year it was, but it was the Bulls playing the Stormers, and we were on a run of the Stormers were taking us year by year by year, and then suddenly we just turned the tables on them. And I think I remember the score was 75 something. I can't remember. I mean, I don't worry about what the Stormers scored. They lost by a landslide. But I mean, that day, and it wasn't even a final of any sorts. It was just a typical north-south derby, as it used to be called. And Loftus was packed to the brim. If I remember correctly, that was the first game after Etienne Botha passed away as well at Loftus, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So that could have been part of the reason, but still, it was packed to the brim for just a regular round-robin game. It wasn't a final or semi-final or quarter-final or whatever, but it was packed to the rafters. And I mean, the Bulls, I think it was a 7-year run that the Stormers had on us. We ended up smashing them, out of the park, literally. But yeah, one of those days, and I still believe it's possible to bring them back. And hopefully, it happens sooner than later. I've got a lot of faith, a lot of hope in this virus that's hitting the world. I think there's going to hopefully come a lot of good out of it, and not just a lot of bad. And I think in all spectrums of the world, sport, everything. You know, I really believe that there's going to become a lot of good out of it at the end of the day. I mean, and yeah, but Andy, I mean, geez, thanks, man. This was really, really lucky to chat to you like this. I mean, I know we chat quite often and we chirp a lot, and and I mean, I'm actually, it's, yeah, when you came to the party and, you know, you said, hey, let's do it. And I realized that you're going to be the first guy on the show. I thought, how appropriate, actually. We've been threatening. I mean, in fact, you've just recently, or you were going to start a radio show, and that's obviously on hold now, I would assume, unless you're going to be doing it from home. I don't know. And I remember one of our last conversations was, you know, you want to chat a bit of rugby to me on that. Well, I'm glad I beat you to that. It wasn't part of the plan at all. I promise you. What happened here tonight literally happened about 4 or 5 days ago. So there's obviously some good coming out of this lockdown so far.
Yeah. We finally spoke face to face.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
That's been amazing, man. I've really enjoyed telling some some emotional stories. It's thanks for the platform. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I must be honest. When you messaged me the other, I said you're looking forward to sharing some emotional stuff. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know what you're on about, but you did. When you told me a story about your dad, I must say, well done. And I'm glad I actually asked you that question, because it wasn't part of my questions at all. So I'm glad we got to the proper stuff, and thanks for sharing that with us. I think for some it might not mean something, but for others, I think they can all relate in some way or another to that story in their own personal capacity. So thank you once again, and yeah, hopefully we can chat one day again on some other topic, maybe, you know, who knows. And 100%. Yeah, I know I've said this before, and hopefully we can watch at least one of the games next year, if it's going to be next year still, for the Lions tour. I'd love to go and watch a game of rugby with you. I think it would be flipping awesome.
Oh mate, it would be epic. And look, that shirt you made me wear after the World Cup final, I'll sign it for you. That'd be your best bit of memorabilia, then, wouldn't it?
I'm sure my wife will allow me to get some space for that, and I'll work in a little tablet or something that can play that video on repeat whenever I have friends over.
It'd be like a video museum of this English idiot that lost a bet. It's great.
Come to think of it now, I should have actually used that video as the intro to tonight's show. That would have been really proper. Although I'm scared you might have disappeared by the end of that video, so that I wouldn't have had a chat. But thanks so much.
There's always a tomorrow. There's always a tomorrow.
Yeah. Hopefully, or I won't say hopefully, but hopefully there is no payback for me. But
there will be.
You know what? I'm up for it. So if it's worth it, let me know and we can talk about it.
I think we can build some hype around a British Lions bet, I'm sure.
I'll be keen on that.
Watch your space. Maybe some ideas from your viewers.
Yeah. We'll throw some. Maybe I'll ask a few of them, or some of the guests coming on. Listen, if there was a bet to be made, what would you do between a South African and a Brit? You know, yeah. So just make it well worth it, because I know we'll walk this one.
We will. What?
Anyway, thanks, Andy, once again, and have a good evening and stay safe, as they would say these days, and keep washing those hands.
Cheers, Jacques. Thanks so much for letting me come on tonight. It's been amazing. Cheers.
Only a pleasure, man. Stay well.
And you.